Tashdele, this is Tibet This Week, a weekly news edition on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let us look at today's headlines. His Holiness the Dalai Lama begins 3-day teachings. Sikyong briefs His Holiness the Dalai Lama on recent official visits. Sikyong congratulates newly elected Meghalaya Chief Minister Conrad Sangma. Central Tibetan Administration holds prayer service to honor Martyrs of 1989. European Parliament's Delegation for Relations with China focuses on current developments in Tibet. Hundreds of Tibet supporters in Taiwan launch peace rally for Tibet. United Nations body recommends China to take corrective actions for widespread human rights violations in Tibet. Australia expresses concern over freedom in Tibet. Swiss Parliament Group for Tibet meets to discuss Tibet. On Tuesday this week, on the final day of the Great Prayer Festival, His Holiness the Dalai Lama read Jataka Tale, a story of one of the Buddha's previous lives during his brief teaching at the Tsuklakang. A key part of the proceedings of this 15th of the month, the first full month day of the year, is to read one of the Jataka tales followed by ceremony for generating bodhicitta, Semke.
Janagi jo rode yorala ta janagi 표준 시주 돌에 지금 요원 로야게 다 소도 세우샤레 사딘데 yen데 다 네 아다데 저 다도 보도 제르무지 최저로상 차고 보유지고 인라 저 후다보다 제세 도시 다 림부르메토 워 겨호 표숨로 지문에 전에기 용수속에 개라담바 어디디 야시 양보소주 민영 공배 야오시 용투야 패시 이시.
On Wednesday, His Holiness began 2-day teaching beginning with the bestowment of the preliminary procedures for Chakra Samvara empowerment to around 5,000 devotees gathered at the main temple in Dharamshala. Sikyong Pimpasring of the Central Tibetan Administration extended his congratulations to the newly elected Chief Minister of Meghalaya, Sri Conrad K. Sangma. Thanking the Chief Minister Sangma for the warm hospitality rendered towards him during his last visit to the state, Sikyong reiterated his gratitude to the government and people of Meghalaya for the kindness and support extended towards the Tibetan community residing in the state. The Central Tibetan Administration organized an hour-long prayer service to remember and honor the sacrifices made by peaceful Tibetan demonstrators who took part in the protests of 1989 against the Chinese government. Speaking to the gathering at the prayer service, Sikyong Pimpasring remembered the sacrifices of peaceful protesters and expressed heartfelt solidarity with them. On 8 March 1989, the Chinese government imposed martial law to repress thousands of peaceful Tibetan demonstrators comprising monks, nuns and lay people who took to the streets to protest against the Chinese authorities. The day is considered in the political history of Tibet as the most tragic moment that killed many Tibetans and many were injured and imprisoned. Every year since then, Central Tibetan Administration organizes a prayer service on 8 March to remember and pay tribute to the Tibetan compatriots who sacrificed their lives and lived for the greater cause of Tibet. On Monday this week, Sikyong Pimpasring briefed His Holiness the Dalai Lama on his recent visit to England and North America during a personal audience. Sikyong said he was able to update His Holiness on his recent official engagements and major developments and activities undertaken by the 16 Kashak since his last audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in December last year. The discussion on Tibet became the focus of the European Parliament's Delegation for Relations with China as the delegations discussed current developments in Tibet. Representative Rinzichote Gengang, Dr. Wen World Wen Prague, Executive President of CREDA and Senior Fellow at the Sompong Sucharitkul Center for Advanced International Legal Studies, Golden Gate University Law School, San Francisco, and M. Fisher, Professor of Equality, Social Protection and Development, Institute of Social Studies, part of Erasmus University Rotterdam, were invited to address the issue. During the 1.5-hour-long exchange of views, members were briefed on the current developments in Tibet, including the implementation of China's coercive assimilationist policies aimed at obliterating the 3 pillars of Tibetan identity, language, culture, and religion, amounting to cultural genocide, Sinicization of Tibetan Buddhism, succession of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and forced labor. In the view of the deteriorating situation in Tibet, the speaker called on the European Union to step up support for Tibet by appointment of an European Union Special Representative for Tibet, by urging China to engage in substantive dialogue with the envoys of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to resolve the Sino-Tibetan conflict peacefully, through recognition of Tibet as an occupied country, among other things. The conference was attended by members of the European Parliament, EP and European Union officials, parliamentary assistants, representatives of NGOs and staff members of the Office of Tibet, Brussels. The Tibetan community and Friends of Tibet in Taiwan commemorated the 10th March Tibetan Uprising Day on Sunday last week in Taipei. The protest gathering was presided over by Representative Kelsang Genzebawa, Freddie Lim, Chair of the Taiwanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet, Vice Chair San Han Hong, Taiwanese politician Mea Poya, and Lin Langjun. The officials spoke in great length, highlighting the gross human rights situation inside Tibet and the significance of the Tibetan Uprising Day. The gathering proceeded for a peaceful rally around the city, launching slogans calling for freedom inside Tibet. Around 600 Tibet supporters, including representatives of civil society groups, turned up in large numbers. The press briefing about the commemoration was held on 3rd March, which was widely covered in Taipei's news media. The UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights released its concluding observations following the 3rd cycle review of China's implementation of the United Nations Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights held in mid-February this year. The United Nations Committee has noted widespread violations by China in the implementation of its obligations under the convention, including in Tibet, East Turkestan, Hong Kong, Macau, and mainland China. The experts have expressed concerns over the forced relocation and rehousing of Tibetan nomads and small-scale farmers and the severe restrictions faced by the Tibetans regarding their rights to take part in cultural life, including the right to use and teach Tibetan language, history, and culture. Representative Tinle Chuiki welcomed the concluding observations and expressed hope that the Chinese government will take the corrective actions recommended by the United Nations body. In a statement delivered by Assistant Foreign Minister Tim Watts at the high-level segments of the United Nations Human Rights Council on 1st March, concerns regarding the erosion of the educational, religious, cultural and linguistic rights and freedom in Tibet were expressed. Assistant Foreign Minister Tim Watts, in his statement, called on the United Nations Special Procedure mandate holders, including all states, to visit Australia, stating the common goal of building a peaceful, stable and prosperous world where every person is allowed to enjoy their human rights. The Swiss Parliamentary Group for Tibet met on 7th March in the Parliament building on the sidelines of the spring session to discuss matters relating to Tibet and Tibetans. The co-president of the group, National Councillor Nicholas Walder, along with new member of the group, National Councillor Natalia Imboden, were present on behalf of the parliamentary group. Representative Tinle Chuiki from Tibet Bureau Geneva, member of the Tibetan Parliament in exile from Europe, Thupten Gyatso, president of the Tibetan Community of Switzerland and Liechtenstein, Karma Chuiki, president of the Swiss Tibetan Friendship Association, Thomas Buckley, and association staff, Bettina, were present at the meeting. That is all for this week's news edition on Tibet This Week. Thank you for watching Tibettv.